Hello, my name is Alexander Lucar, and I'm an HMIS administrator for Montgomery County. In today's training, we are going to look at the service transactions report. It's pretty quick and easy to run, but we still want to make sure that you have official training on it. So let's take a look at it now. There are two ways to get to the service transaction report. Both of them involve the little reports button over on the left-hand side of your screen. Now, we can either click on the button directly. That will take us here to the reports dashboard, and we scroll down and click service transaction, and that will take us here. Otherwise, we can click on the arrow by reports and choose service transaction from this drop-down list. And again, it takes us to this report. Both ways will take us to the service transaction report. Just depends on how you want to get there. So again, we can click on the button, scroll down and pick service transaction report, or we can click on the arrow and click service transaction from the drop-down menu. So here we are at the service transaction report. Now we just have to fill in the parameters of the report. So let's start off with provider search type. We have a drop-down menu here. The options in your drop-down menu are going to change based on your access level. So for example, as a system admin, I have system-wide. You probably won't have that. If we choose this one, system-wide, it literally will pull every single provider in the Montgomery County COC that uses a service point account, that uses HMIS. If we do this selected provider only, it will go to the default client that I am currently using, the default provider that I'm currently using. And as we can see, that's Montgomery County Continuum of Care, and I can change it as needed. So for example, maybe I wanted to change it to Stepping Stone. And now we're doing an emergency shelter. Or maybe I wanted to do City of Gaithersburg COG. No, it doesn't really matter. It's just whatever programs you have access to, you can choose provider, and it will let you do a report just on that program. I would strongly advise going this route by just picking one single program, because that way you'll get information about that specific program. If you do a whole bunch of programs together, which is the next option, this provider and its subordinates, which will be anything for under your agency. So if you chose interfaith, it would pull all interfaith programs. If you did Catholic Charities, it would do all Catholic Charities programs and put them into one lump report. I personally prefer to look at one provider at a time, but there are times when this can come in helpful. For the purposes of this report, however, what we're going to choose is system-wide. And the reason we're doing system-wide is because we're in the training site. These are fake clients, fake service transactions, and I want to make sure we pull enough for us to have a report to look at in this recording. Next up are services. You're going to pick which of these boxes you want to do a report on. Needs, services, shelter stays, referrals. Now, this is the service transaction report, so you're probably going to choose services. However, if you wanted to look at just needs, you could choose needs. If you wanted to look at just shelter stays, you could do that. Same with referral. However, I prefer to use just services here. I don't like to do more than one. Like you can see, you can do 1 to 4, because that clutters up the report and it doesn't really make it easy for when you export it to a Excel compatible program called CSV. What you want to do is just pick one of these, because it's so much easier to read and navigate through if you just be specific and choose one of these. As well, I tend not to use the needs, shelter stays, or referrals here, and that's because they have their own specific reports. As you can see back here on the report screen, if we take a look, there's a needs report, so I don't really do the needs under the service transaction. Referrals, same thing. See how we have referrals? So I don't do referrals under the service transaction report. And for shelter stays, I tend to do the daily unit report. You could also do the client served report. As you see, that has a shelter stays option as well. But mostly when I want to look at shelter stays, I do the daily unit report. So it's kind of superfluous to have these options here when there are other reports that do it. But hey, maybe you like the format of this report and you want to see how referrals look. You want to see how needs look in it. Maybe this is a report that speaks to you and you can do a lot with it. So you have the options there. For this training though, we're only going to do services. Next up is the service code. So this is when you want to look at a very specific code for one of your services. Maybe you're talking about basic needs, or maybe you're talking about transportation assistance, or maybe you're talking about childcare. You will have specific services on your drop-down menu when you do services. If you're not sure about what those codes are, we cover it in the service transactions training, where we specifically look at how to properly code and enter a service transaction to service point. So we assume that you know how to do it here. Each of those choices in your drop-down menu has a specific service code. So you might be thinking, oh, well, I'll do this, and then that way I can only look at one specific service because I want to see how many, education service transactions we did. The problem with this is, and let's click on the button, is that it uses the errors taxonomy. And there are tens of thousands of options in here, and it's really easy to get it wrong. So for example, let's say we wanted to do basic needs. We want to make sure we choose select for basic needs. See how that came up? If we actually click on the word basic needs instead of the select, it gives us a subcategory like food, housing and shelter, material goods, transportations, utilities. And let's say we chose transportation. See, and now you have to pick what specific transportation. And remember, your drop-down menu is limited. So how do you know which is the right one of all these transportation codes? So it can be pretty easy to mess this up. As well, let's say you want to look up a service. Let's say you want to look up whale watch. Yes, it's in here. Again, errors taxonomy has codes for literally everything. There you go, whale watching tours. However, here in Montgomery County, whale watching tours is not a choosable option from the drop-down menu. So if you tried to do a report on how many whale watching tours your clients have had, it's going to come up blank because it's not a code we use here. So it's really best to leave the service code blank. And we'll see why in a little bit, not only because what we've just covered, in that it's so easy to get this wrong. More often than not, you're going to get this wrong and your report isn't going to run correctly. But when we build report, it's going to give us a list of service transaction types anyway without choosing this. So when you export it to Excel, you can easily filter and sort. Need date range. If you're doing needs, this is where you want to choose your range. If you're doing services, this is the date range option you want to choose. We're doing services, so this is the range we want to do. You can do a single day, you can do a year, you can do any range you want. For the purposes of this report that we're doing here, I'm just going to do a range from the first of the year until today, July 26th. Again, because this is the training site, and I want to make sure we pull enough service transactions so you can see how the report runs. Finally, we have need outcome. Now, this is another option like service code. I strongly suggest you just leave it all to make sure it gets everything. And the reason for that is because if you choose one of these 4 other options, fully met, not met, partially met, and service pending, it will only pull those if the need outcome is stuck at this. So for example, it will only pull ones that you've coded as fully met needs. In order to do this coding, you have to go back into the needs and update them as they progress. Now, a lot of programs don't do that. So if you look for fully met, you're probably not going to pull all the service transactions you're actually looking for. By pulling all, it's going to guarantee you get everything. And it's always better to get too much and sort afterwards than to get too little and assume that's actually everything you needed. So I always leave this as all. Like service code, it's best to leave these alone, make sure it's choosing everything, because that way you'll definitely get everything you need rather than too little and leaving out things that aren't necessarily coded in the way you think they should be. Once you have all of your parameters set up, we just click build report. As you can see, it's really instantaneous. This works in real time and will grab everything really quickly. In this case, we can see that we have a total of 37 service transactions. On this screen, the report will only show 20 at a time. So if you want to see the next set, 21 to 37, you click the next button, and now you can see we're showing 21 to 37. It does do them in chronological order. So the last one's going to be the most recent one. There we go, 7/12. And the first one is going to be the oldest one, January 15th. Now, there are 7 different columns here for us to look at. Need date, name, need type, created by, referred to, service, and service provider. Now, because we've done a service transaction, this is actually the service date, and the service type, it just defaults to need type and need date. I don't know why. That's just a WellSky thing. Don't worry about it. Just remember that these are actually services. If you do referrals, it will be the same way, right? So let's take a look at each of these ones. Need date, this is the date that the service, again, remember it's actually service because that's what we chose up here. We chose services. This is the date the service happened. Name, this is the client's name. Need type, what type of service did you provide? Created by, this is the location that set it up. So for example, this benefits assistance was by Dorothy Day. This housing search was done by Pathways Street Outreach. Referred to, this is almost always going to be blank unless you're Path, and even then it still might be blank. Service, what type of service was done? Again, this is just to make sure that these two match. If they don't, there's probably a coding error that we just want to look for. And then finally, service provider. Now, why do we have two different here? Why do we have created by and service provider? It looks like they're pretty much the same, but there is a subtle difference, and this will help you to find enter data as errors. So for example, if the created by is different from the service provider, it means the case manager was accidentally doing enter data as the wrong program. So maybe you were, this says Dorothy Day Women. What that would mean is that the case manager was accidentally EDAing as Dorothy Day Women when they put in a service for Dorothy Day Men. So we just want to double check and make sure that everything looks correct. Everything matches up, right? Everything matches up. And if there is anything that doesn't match up, we know there's an EDA error. And that's all we want to look for. That's why we have both of these, right? And now the last thing I want to show you is download results. We're going to click on this once we are sure that everything looks good and we want to export this to an Excel compatible file. We choose download results. It says, hey, do you want to download this? We say yes. And here we go. It's downloaded. And it's in Excel. And then we can update this Excel file however we want. Increase these. We can get rid of the referred to since it's blank. And again, this is where we talked about where you can sort. So for example, maybe you only want to see benefit assistance. You know, you can go in like any other Excel file, filter, and I only want to see benefits assistance. And there's all the benefit assistance done. Maybe I only want to see all the basic needs. You can see only one person has basic needs. And so if you want to, as we talked about earlier, if you only want to see a specific service code, like basic needs, grab everything. Don't worry about the service code. Make sure the need outcome is all, and then you can just filter it in the Excel file once you've exported to Excel. Now, you might also notice that there's something in blue here. And although I did say this is the final thing I wanted to show you, the download, I do want to show you this as well. It's just I want to do it for last, and we're going to see why. If you click on any of the things that are in blue, it's going to take you directly into that. So if we click on, say, any of the names in blue, it's going to take us directly into that client's account. If we click on the need type, it's going to take us directly to that service transaction, that specific one for us to look at. So I'm going to go here and let's say we did Kenny Omega, right? If we click on his name, here we go. We're in Kenny Omega's account. It takes us directly to the summary page, and we've got all of his information. The only problem with doing that is if we try and go back to the service transaction report, it's blank now. That's why I wanted to show you it for last instead of having to rerun the report. So again, if you click on anything in blue, it will take you specifically to that so that you can get a quick look at the client in case there's something you need to fix. Again, like maybe it's that EDA error, or maybe you notice that you put the service under the wrong client or it has the wrong date. You can click on it and go directly into that account or that specific service transaction and make corrections. That's all there is for the service transaction report here today. I hope this was helpful to you guys. As always, I'm glad you joined me for a training, and I look forward to doing more with you in the future. Have a great day.